thank you very much for the introductions. And as the President said, this has come about really through working through the recruitment process and trying to get our presentations to prospective students to be clearer and more effective. And so we've been rehearsing people. We're going to continue to rehearse them. And the idea is the same for us as it is in business, to increase the yield or to increase the hit rate on numbers of students we get to attend here. You know, if you're in industry, if I'm an architect, if I have a 25% hit rate in my interviews, I'm actually doing pretty well. If I have a 50% hit rate, I have twice as much business. And so the idea is to build your business, and they really base a lot of whether you're going to win or lose this thing on your presentation at the interview. So that's what this is really about. We're being interviewed by parents and students, or every day you're standing in front of a class and you're having to give effective presentations. And my point to you is, don't let the PowerPoint stand in the way of it. And we do that a lot. We let the PowerPoint not assist us, but it stands between you and the effectiveness of your presentation. So what I want to talk about today is, number one, just some very basics on slide layouts and graphics. Some of you may be beyond this stuff. This may be very rudimentary, and some of you may say, oh, I'm learning something new today, and that's fine, wherever you are. If you're beyond it, sit through it. The second is verbal presentations, just some ideas that I've developed over the years from both observing people about presentations as well as giving them myself and being criticized for them over the years. And a third element on adapting to different kinds of audiences. Every audience is different, so you have to understand the uniqueness of that audience as you present. First rule, first guideline is just keep it simple. Keep the layout simple. Provide a clear and clean and orderly format for the presentation of materials. If it gets too complex, then the complexity of the layout stands in the way of your message. Keep it very, very simple, like this. Standardized backgrounds. And people say, oh, look, I can put fireworks in my thing. You know, look at what happens. Look at what happens, you know. The wording gets caught up in here. Graphically, the fireworks stand in the way. Now, this is what PowerPoint gives you. Rule number one is, don't take what PowerPoint gives you. It doesn't give you a lot of good design. It just gives you stupid templates. Like those engineers that built the levees. Stupid things. But the idea is that the background stands in the way of your message. Or, we'll bring this back later. This is a standard PowerPoint template, the leaves of fall. You can look out and see them now and compare them. And these are the standard colors that they're giving you in this. And what I'm going to do, hold on to this thought, because later in the presentation I'm going to bring this one back and show you what it does to you later on in the show if you're going to try to adapt it to something else. Or the beautiful ocean. And you will find again that this will stand in the way of a lot of things that you want to do. Namely, if I want to put the Lawrence Tech logo down here, it kind of stands out as not being very effective. Although we have talked to the people at Advancement, and they're designing a logo with a clear background. They have designed a logo.
It's on your little image database.
It's on our image database. So now you can put the Lawrence Tech logo in, I guess, 3 colors.
They're PNG files, so they're on transparent.
And they're on transparent backgrounds, so you can put it over any background. So that solves one of our problems. But
one of the things he should probably note is he shouldn't put the logo down below where the podium blocks it.
they should do that. Should do that.
Or we should have a projector in the ceiling.
Or we should have better equipment for what is becoming a university space instead of just an architectural space. But you know, but we're not here to have that argument here. But thank you very much for clarifying that and interrupting. But you know, you are the president. It's your hall. Okay, PowerPoint guidelines. Keep it simple. Use a solid background for color or text body. It gives you a lot of variety, a lot of ability to do a number of things. Doesn't have to be black. It can be a white background. But as your starting point, start with a simple layout. You can put something to one side or down below if you wanted to. That would be a color. And you can coordinate the color here and the color there. And you can use this color block in which to put pictures or diagrams or other things like that, and it keeps them organized that way. You can change the colors. So I'm not saying it has to be any specific color. It can be any color that you think appropriate, but the point is develop a system for yourself that allows you to organize your slide into an area for text and an area for photographs or diagrams or pictures. So this is from one of the presentations that I've given recently in the real estate development class, where I wanted to show a district from a project that I had worked on, and some of the rules of real estate development, and then some pictures of some of the development types that we were talking about for a transit-oriented development. So very simple, organized, black background, the lettering, and very simple lettering, and then the simple photographs and diagrams put over to one side. In other words, it's a system that allows for a great amount of variety of images and text, but the system doesn't overpower the presentation that you're trying to make. It allows the presentation to fit. Here's another one where I was talking about the evolution of architectural and design practice, and again, the same kind of thing. Now, I want to show you this, so I put an image. I was talking about the global evolution in practice, so I wanted to put an international city like Shanghai, and I wanted to put a picture of the globe. Now, the picture of the globe that I pulled off gives me a black background. So if I do a black background and a black background, you have a kind of unwieldy L-shaped space that doesn't work really well. But if you put a little light gray line down, it organizes it into those various areas of your slide. So I still have the area for the photographs, and then I have the area for the text. But without that line, you end up with a space that kind of goes around, and it becomes a little visually cumbersome to have this L-shaped space. It'd be like a dog leg in golf. They're harder to play. In this particular instance, using a horizontal line across to organize the title versus the rest of the text, and then tying the color of that in with the color of the logo and the color of the globe, the color of the ring around the globe, again, graphically attempting to coordinate the presentation into a theme, or that slide into a theme. So the point is, don't just take what PowerPoint gives you. You're actually in control of this, and you're in control of the graphics and in control of the colors, and in control of everything that goes on that slide. And if you take what PowerPoint gives you, PowerPoint's in control, and it's standing in the way of the effectiveness of your presentation. In terms of text, every slide where you're putting text, and we'll talk a little later, you don't have to have text on all slides. I mean, sometimes big pictures are just fine. But if you're going to have text, it's always good to put a major title, larger title on a slide, especially when there's a new category of information. It helps you to organize the slide and helps the viewer to understand what area you are in terms of your presentation, in terms of the organization of your presentation. It's okay also to change the color of the title as being different from the color of the text. Again, that gives you some points of emphasis within the slide. The things that show up best, by the way, are graphically are white text on a black background, or black text on a white background will show better. And actually, in terms of if you read the ADA guidelines for people with visual impairments, the most easy to spot text for someone with a visual impairment is serif text, black lettering on a white background is the easiest to spot, the easiest for someone to see that has a visual impairment, because the serifs actually help them pick up more of the letter. Now, I'm an architect. I don't use serifs. How many architects here use serifs? Only Ralph. Only Ralph. But he's only been here for a few months. We're gonna get him away from serifs pretty soon. Okay, what size? Well, you know, PowerPoint again, it gives you choices here, and you have to be in charge of the choices. For major titles, about a 40 to 48 point minimum is what you should do on a major title. For text sizes, minor text sizes, 36 to 40 point, bullet points, 30 to 36 points, sub-bullets, 24 to 28 points. you know, et cetera. Bullet titles, again, 30 to 36. So if they are too small, people in the back of the room aren't going to be able to see them. Can you see these from the back of the room? Okay. If I were down to, they could be smaller. A lot. I'm sorry they're offending you, but if we had 150 people in the room, and they were 18-point or 16-point, you may not be able to see them from the back of the room. So you set it up. You set up every presentation for the person that's sitting last in the room to be able to see it. And since I've given this thing several times, I don't know whether I'm giving it to 50 people or 150 people. Now, the other thing is I think it's better, personally, graphically, to align your text. Now, I like left justification. And the reason why I like left justification, I'll show it in a minute, is bullets don't look good with right justification. And to also align up your sub areas on your slide. So in other words, yeah, you may have to indent things, but if you have to indent, try and keep that line solid. And when you indent, there's a subline that you try and keep aligned as well. You don't have things jumping all over the place. There's an orderly way of doing it. It's like the structure of a building that tends to have an ordering system where elements line up. This is bad. Bullets that are center justified or right justified, and you end up with an alignment like this. And it makes it really hard to read because your eye is trying to skip all over the place to get to the next bullet, and it's not an orderly way of just transitioning to the left side. In our culture, we read left to right. So you want to bring people to the left side of the page every time you're starting a new line. Now, you may do it a certain way for impact. Then you're in control of it. But as a general rule, you should align your bullets all together, left justified. Whenever you can, use what we call a 5x5 rule with text. So that's do not exceed bullet point messages on any slide and use no more than 5 words in any bullet point. Now, what did I do? I just violated my own rule. But I knew I was going to do that because I can show you what that slide would turn out like if you used the 5x5 rule. 5 bullet point message maximum, 5 words per line maximum. And why do you follow this? It's because your readers, all they're looking at is your cue card. If you need to explain it in all the text, hand them the paper. But don't put the paper on the page. These are your cue cards as much as anything. I mean, the PowerPoint slides and the bullets are nothing more than the cue card for the person that's giving the presentation and a little reference for the people that are here. If you put a lot of words, people aren't listening to what you're saying because they're reading the words, or they're trying to read the words before you finish the slide. So the bullet points are cue cards. They should be used as such. They are not the narrative. Again, if you're going to put the narrative, if you're giving a paper at a scholarly conference, make the whole paper available to people, have the disc available, whatever it is. You're not putting the narrative of whole pages of text on here. We'll talk about that in a little while. And you shouldn't go down in your PowerPoint without some explanatory things and read merely in your presentation, read the points verbatim. The audience can read them as well. You can read the points verbatim, but explain what each one means. If I stood here and said bullet points, cue cards, not a narrative, do not read verbatim. Next slide. Now the thing is, coordinate your colors. We have logos here. The logos are in 3 colors according to university guidelines. They're in black, white, and blue. Now, if you want to coordinate colors, black is always an easy one. Black's a neutral, or white is a neutral, goes with anything. If you're going to use the blue, it pretty well forces your hand, in my mind, to what color your title is. If you have a big gold title at the top and a blue logo at the bottom, there's always this consonant in the way that you're doing it, or at least pick something that's in a color range that reconciles those two things. I don't know. I don't like the blue and the gold together, unless we're at what school? Michigan. Okay. Okay, text. And I've seen this here at this university. People giving papers and reports. and they excerpt out whole pages of text and put it on the slide, sometimes not in lettering this big. You know, this is probably about 16, 18-point lettering that I put in, and then you know, sometimes I'll put it in 9-point letters. And I'm going to assume that you can still read this in the back of the room, okay? But if I had it at 9-point, you wouldn't be able to read it. And at the end, by the end of this, they're reading blah, 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 because that's what it looks like to them. You know, that's what it really looks like to them. And the blahs, blahs get louder and louder to them as you're going. I've been through presentations like this, and it makes me nervous to see all these words on the slide. And what I've actually seen is the person standing in front of the slide, people standing in front of the slide, more than one, and actually reading the text that's on the slide to the audience that could also read the text. The point of a presentation is to summarize the text. It's not to read the text. It's to summarize your ideas. You can give them the paper. You can send them the DVD. You can put it online, whatever you want to do. But it's a summary. It's not the whole text. Sometimes you put a lot of text on. This is a blog that one of our students that was working for Disney, he started putting out a blog. And I wanted to use it for recruitment. He sent me this photo. I don't know why the 45-degree angular photos, but okay. It's the only photo I had of him. But he talked about how LTU prepared him, so that's bigger here. And there are just a couple of ideas I wanted to get to the people. That while he was off campus, LTU had online classes. You notice that's kind of bolded. That's bolded heavier. And that LTU prepared him for a real-world scenario, real-world practice. Those are the only 2 points I wanted to make, but it was within his big blog. So I didn't want people to concentrate on the whole thing. I just wanted to concentrate on a few words. So I just highlighted those couple of words. And so I don't read the whole thing. I just talk about the 2 ideas that this person conveyed. So what about violating guidelines? Well, the point about violating guidelines is it's inevitable that you do. Sometimes it just doesn't work to follow the guidelines. The 5x5 rule is the most easily violated guideline around. I proclaim it and then I violate it almost every slide presentation I give. It's because sometimes the ideas that you're trying to convey defy 5 points and 5 words per point. But whenever you do it, just make sure that you do it with a purpose. Use subtitles, use bullets, use ways of breaking it down, use different colors in the text. Break down those ideas, because the more words you put on a page, the harder it is for someone to follow it. So here, this is something that I've used in recruiting before, and I haven't used this one in several years, but wanted to show all the things about our Bachelor of Science in Architecture. Rather than making it 2 slides, you put it all in one slide, but the point is that you don't read down each one of these things and say every point on there. You pick out about 2 or 3 to talk about. What's happening right now? Everyone's reading all these things, right? So you're reading it. All I have to do is talk about 2 or 3 key ideas that the slide conveys while you're reading. And I can point to the things that I think are really important. But if I went down here and talked about every 8 or 9, all 8 or 9 of them, it's a pretty boring slide. Here's something that I did actually for our own faculty. Just wanted to talk about how accomplished our faculty was. More than the 5 words. I only had 1 slide to do it, but the point is not that you go through each one of these points in detail. You say, look at all the stuff we've done. And they're in these broad categories. And look at all the people that we had doing it. Isn't that terrific? Don't we have a great faculty? Faculty, right? Great? Okay. And we have a very accomplished group of people. That's all you have to do when you're showing this to potential recruits. We have a really accomplished faculty. Look at all the stuff that we do. Actually, I've actually improved this one based on some criticisms that I had back from the group that I was presenting to, and Allie. Most people call their wives their most severest critic. For me, it's Allie. But everyone needs a severe critic. You know that, right? But this is actually one of the cornerstones of our recruiting students here. Is to differentiate, whenever you're competing for something, whether it's a job in the profession or a grant or recruiting students, the way that you win is to differentiate yourself from your competition. And hopefully the differentiation is a positive thing for the people in the audience. But even if it isn't, at least you want to send them on the right path. You don't want someone that's a mismatch for you necessarily coming here, because they're not going to stay here very long. So the point is that in schools of architecture, the ACSA, which is the Collegiate Schools of Architecture, they have a series of regions. The regions are color-coded, as you see over here. And the schools break down into 4 types of schools. And by far the most prevalent type of school is research and theory schools. And many of the schools are moving towards research and theory. 65% of all schools of architecture now in the United States are research and theory. They're part of a Research One university, and that's their mission. About 35% of the schools, and these are our peer schools, are practice-oriented schools. So we're in the minority of schools. That differentiates us from the competition. And so the question is, what do you want to do for your career? Do you really want to be an architect? Because if you really want to be an architect, you're going to be much better in a practice school than you are in a research school. That's the message. Differentiate yourself from the competition, and then show why a practice-based education is more sound for someone that really wants to be an architect. So you're sitting there in front of high school students, and you're saying, how many of you want to be architects? And they all hold up their hands. 100% of them hold up their hands, you know, the ones that want to be architects. Some of them want to be graphic designers and things like that. But of the ones that want to be architects, they want to practice architecture. They want to get a license in architecture. At least sitting from their high school point, that's what they want to do. So you want to say, this is the best route to be an architect. If you want to research about architecture, if you want to, you know, if you want to write about architecture, if you want to teach in a research-oriented school, there's probably a better school for you. But if you want to practice architecture, this is the school for you. Differentiate yourself from your competition, and sometimes a slide like this will help you. By the way, June Kim, you're still good looking, you know. I've been going around giving a lot of lectures on climate change recently, for about 5 years now. And this is one slide that I just recently put together. People were saying, well, isn't there a lot of skepticism about it? I said, yeah, there is. And so I found 117 reasons to debunk the whole theory of climate change. And also the scientific community has answered each one of those reasons. So there's a debate going on in the country. And so I took about 10 or 12 of these and excerpted them. And again, 10 or 12 violates the rule, so you want the eye just to go to some key points. And you don't talk about all of them. You can always draw a laugh when you say, a lot of people think it's political, it's Al Gore's fault that we're even talking about climate change, you know, and people say, oh, Al Gore, yeah, that's funny. You're obviously not in that crowd. You know, a lot of people are saying, well, you know, it was cold last winter and we had snow in the Northeast, so we can't possibly be having global warming, you know, and so you have to, and there's a whole debunk for that. The point is that I wanted to graphically use things that related to the sun. So I used the sun, used volcanoes, used gold and yellow, and in terms of colors and things of that nature, just to you know, to give the feeling of heat. The other thing, and I just wanted to show you something. Look at this. Now we have blue, a cold color, against orange which is a warm color. If you just put a little tone, 10% orange tone on top of this, it brings it graphically in to the gold tone a little bit better. It makes the images a little warmer. So let me just go back to that again, because there it is in its normal state, and then, whoops, I'm sorry. Let me go back. Okay, there's normal, just a little bitty orange tone pulls that closer together in terms of the view. And again, you don't read those things point for point. You pick out 2 or 3. Images, always use clear images. If you go to the internet, chances are you're going to pull up some images that when you put them on a PowerPoint slide look like that. So if it looks like that, don't use it. People can't see it. But if you go to highlight the image to a greater amount, you know, blow it up before you import it into PowerPoint, you're going to come up with a much clearer image. So most of the time it says enlarge image. You go to the larger image, and if you import that one, it's just fine. The other thing is, to me, aligning the images is important because it gives you that graphic line. We'll talk a little bit in a minute about full slide images. The other thing you want to avoid is the watermarks. You don't want to come up with a slide, even if it's a great image. I can't tell you how many great images I've given up because it has the watermark right across the center of the image. I mean, people want you to pay for it, and all that kind of stuff, and that's why they put the watermark on it. And, for academic use, we can use an image. We can't sell it. We can't sell the slideshow that we use it on, but we can use it one time for educational purposes. We can go to the internet and pull things off as long as we credit the image. So you always credit the image, and you always, I always crop out their watermark, and I put my own on. But don't show the watermark on it. There are ways of cropping it. Sometimes you just want to use full slide images, no text. In fact, a lot of the, if you go to the historical, the history lectures, art history, architecture history, almost the whole lecture is given in this kind of thing without a lot of words. The images are powerful enough, and the description, a good teacher is going to be able to teach around these things without the notes actually on the slide. Again, one of the keys, though, is if you haven't taken the picture, to credit each and every source. And if you had arrived earlier, you wouldn't be sitting behind the podium. You'd be sitting over to the side.
Make the type larger.
I don't have to make the type larger to conform to the law. I don't want the person that took the photograph, even though I know you're a photographer. That's irrelevant to the presentation, but it's there. If people want to see it, it's there. This, I took the picture, so it doesn't need crediting. I just think it's a cool picture out of a hotel room that I stayed in Shanghai last year. And if I were going to do a presentation on air pollution in China, this would be a really good slide to show. This is literally out of my hotel room window. I put together this. This is a full slide image, but the message that I was trying to get at is the interrelationship among elements of design and art and architecture. And so you don't describe everything here, but you want to talk about the relationship. And I was just giving a presentation on this to high school students in an art class and an architecture class last week. And I said to them, does anyone know who did this? And they knew. They said, Mondrian. Great. Here's a high school student that knows who Mondrian is, And I said, does anyone know what that is? No one knew it. Charles Ames' house in California. And then you can talk about the conceptual similarities in that facade to Mondrian's work, and that there's a relationship between the study of art and the study of architecture. Or we can talk about parametric design, graphic design, and the relationship between that and Frank Gehry's work, without which parametric design and without parametric design, Frank Gehry could not actually create his buildings, because that's the way that they actually get those surfaces constructed. So the slide allows me to find my way around and show comparisons between art and architecture or among all design disciplines, which in our school, being a multidisciplinary design school, we want to show. Sometimes, a cartoon or a drawing can be a full slide. And when someone said, well, it was cold this year and it snowed in the Northeast, and therefore there can't be anything like climate change happening, it can't be global warming, the counterpoint from the scientific community is that's exactly why it's happening. Because the ocean is heating up, it evaporates more into clouds, the cloud cover crosses the country, and it drops the moisture, either in rain or, if it's colder than freezing, in snow. So you have record rainfalls, record snows, and it's all a result of climate change, not because of there's no climate change, no global warming. It's because of global warming that we're having more snow. That's the answer from the scientific community. But the diagram shows it, and the diagram is not as powerful unless you go up to a whole slide to show it. You show this as a little piece of a slide in the corner, it's not as powerful an image. This is one that I prepared in honor of our president. He had his stand up everyone. He had his building blocks, the pillars of preeminence, and so I recreated it just using PowerPoint and the ability to animate PowerPoint. So I wanted to build the image of his temple. So these are the steps leading up to the temple, first of all starting with the foundation of the vision, and then each of the pillars, the notable faculty, and you could talk about this as these things are animating up, but just using the words to actually create the image of the temple. And these are the 6 pillars of preeminence that the president has come up with. And then the point, I wanted to make the architectural illusion that these pillars are not very stable just standing there alone, that they need something to connect them. And in the Greek temple, it's the architrave that connects all those columns or pillars together. And for us, it's interdisciplinary connections that allows us to make those connections among the pillars of preeminence. And only then can you complete the entire temple of preeminence that we are. But the point being that it's the animation that allows you to build this with the anticipation of the next element to come. If you just shot this thing up here and say, oh yeah, you built the thing out of words, but to build it in front of the people in words is actually an action-oriented device where you can talk about it as it's building. One of my favorite slides, actually, it's become one of my favorite slides. I was asked by the AIA in Michigan to give a climate change presentation to them in August. And what I did is I've been studying 2 cities, Detroit and Southeast Michigan, and New Orleans and southern Louisiana. And because the 2 cities have gone in very similar parallel paths in many ways. And I came upon this research that was conducted by a professor at Louisiana State University. His name is down there, Michael Blum. He's been credited for this. Using NASA images. He published the results in National Geographic. And this is the prediction, the scientific models of prediction, because of, this is how the levee discussion came up earlier. The levees built along the Mississippi River are depriving silt from getting into the Mississippi, which is actually causing the delta to retreat back. When I was a kid in New Orleans, I grew up there. That's why it means so much to me. That's why this presentation means so much to me. The house where I lived was 90 miles from the mouth of the Mississippi River, from the delta. Today, that same house, which is in the same place, Katrina did not destroy the house, is 70 miles. So the delta has retreated in my lifetime 20 miles. And it's retreating very, very rapidly because of the lack of silt. And when you combine the lack of silt with what the scientific community is believing will be sea level rise and climate change, this is what they're predicting in 2100. The reason I'm showing this is the before and after of the PowerPoint animation. This is now. This is the year 2100. And what the Gulf of Mexico is expected to be in the year 2100, in other words, the old delta disappears to a large degree, and this area becomes the new Gulf coastline with only enough silt to maintain a very small band around the delta. Remember, most of this area is actually below sea level. So if you have no delta, the delta not being replenished to any great degree, only a minuscule fraction of what it needs to replenish itself, and sea level rise, that's what happens to one of the great cities in the United States. It's a very powerful image that you can get if you animate it one image on top of the other. If you put them side by side, people say, oh, that's really interesting. If you do this, they can actually see it disappearing in front of them. And it's actually a pretty important diagram for the concept.